Study Hebrew with me. Today we are on Genesis chapter 32, verse 28, where Jacob wrestles with the angel and his name is changed. In Hebrew, the name is Yisra'el, which translates in English to Israel and consists of a wordplay on the verb sarah, which means to strive, struggle, or contend, coupled with the noun el, which means God. And then it says, though compound names such as this are common in Hebrew and related Semitic languages, it is unusual for the divine name suffix to represent the object rather than the subject of the verbal element. Which basically means it's unusual for a word like this to use God as the suffix to mean God is not the subject of the sentence. In other words, it's not saying that God is the one who's struggling, someone else is struggling with God. That's the point. God is the object of the sentence, not the subject of the sentence. And saying that's uncommon, right? So then it goes on to say, but in Scripture the name Israel is taken to mean he who strives with God, rather than the expected God strives. This is the new name given to Jacob after wrestling with God's angel, and the national name given to the 12 tribes descended from Jacob. So what's interesting here is how it says it means to strive with God. And in English, that can have two possible meanings, right? It could be that you are struggling with God on your side against something, like you and God are struggling. Or it can mean you are struggling with God, like against God. I am struggling against God. Which, if you're reading Genesis 32, verse 28, that's really the implied meaning. That's the context of it. Jacob is literally wrestling and struggling with God, which also makes sense when you look at the history of God's people, Yisra'el. They sometimes are following God's commands, and other times they're not, and they're quite literally in opposition to God. So there is Yisra'el, our Hebrew word for today.